And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and thank you for joining me on this Saturday afternoon. It's fine and lovely Saturday afternoon as we enter the second week of October. And thanks everybody for joining me in the live chat whenever you guys eventually do. Still early. Before I get started, as always, I wanted to encourage you to subscribe to Behind the Steel Curtain's YouTube channel, where we bring you podcasts each and every day. There is Steelers Preview, Steelers post-game show. There's Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman. That's audio only. There's the Live Mic with Michael Beck. That's audio only. There's the Retro Show with Brian Anthony Davis and myself. That is audio only, but there are plenty that are both audio and YouTube. So please like that and give us a like that on YouTube, and give us a great rating on your podcasting platforms. You can find us on anywhere you find audio podcasts. You can find our stuff. It's great stuff. The guys behind the scenes: Brian Anthony Davis, Jeff Hartman, Dave Schofield, Michael Beck, Jeffrey Benedict, Dave's brother Rich. I can go on and on and on. If I miss anybody, I'm sorry, but everybody's doing a great job of trying to bring you content each and every day, both in the podcasting form and in written form on Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown. As we like to say, Behind the Steel Curtain is your one-stop stop for all your Steelers needs. So please, I encourage you to check that out. You will not be sorry. And there's everybody in the live chat joining me. There's Jared Devil, Steelers Pittsburgh, Dave Yu, that's a new one, Wes Hickok, my man Wes. And Wes asked me how my family's doing. I'm doing great. My family's doing great. Thank you for asking. Gary Houston, Boing Boom. I'm not going to even try to say that last name, but it's a pretty funny first name. I like that. Solarverse, another great name. Dave Shipley, my man Dave, a legend. So thanks everybody for joining me. And as always, I want to talk about a few different topics this week on today's show. And of course, to echo Gary Houston's comment, happy Saturday, folks. One more day, indeed. As we talked last week at this time on Saturday, as I did the show, and throughout the week, you had to deal with the Steelers' unexpected bye because of everything that went down with the Tennessee Titans the week before, with several players and staff members coming down with COVID-19, testing positive. So throughout that week, after week 3 and heading into week 4, more and more members of that organization tested positive. So after some thought, originally the league wanted to move last week's game to Monday or Tuesday, but after some consideration, they decided, since the byes worked out for both the Titans and the Steelers as well as the Ravens, since it all worked out with byes, they decided to move last week's game to October 25th. So we didn't have Steelers football last week. So people were pretty bummed about that. A lot of people were pretty miffed, including the team and the fans. So again, the bye came about in a rather surprising and unexpected and unwelcome fashion. But we got through that. We survived that as a team and as a fan base. Excuse me. Excuse me. Wow, I'm talking too much, I guess. Pardon that little cough there. But anyway, we survived that, and now we're ready for week 5 between the Steelers and the Eagles tomorrow afternoon, Sunday afternoon at Heinz Field at 1:00. So it's great to have football back. And like I said last week, the bye was unexpected. You didn't see it coming, but boom, it's gone. And now here we are. As of right now, we have 13 more weeks of Steelers football to look forward to, and the Steelers are off to a great start. The bye didn't change that. They're still 3-0. Things are still promising. They're still in first place in the AFC North. So I will talk about that game at Sunday's matchup a little bit later. But first, I want to talk about those Titans. Yes, those Titans. After a few days, or at least a couple of days last week of some negative tests, more Titans players tested positive on Wednesday for COVID-19. I believe the number got up to 23 between players and coaches and staff members. There's Joe. By the way, more people are checking in on the live chat. Joe, Schmo, Ezra. So thanks everybody for joining me. So anyway, more Titans players tested positive, and that put the Titans game against the Bills in jeopardy. That was scheduled for Sunday, but because of the continued positive tests for the virus, the league, as of now, as of the last time I checked anyway, the league has decided to move that game to Tuesday. So, and because of that, the Thursday night game between the Chiefs and the Bills will now be played tentatively next Sunday. So that's where we stand right now with the Titans. It was revealed not only that more players from the Titans organization tested positive for the virus, but it was revealed by a Titans beat reporter that the week of heading into week 4, right after the Titans facility was closed down and the team and the players were told not to gather, not to come back to work, just to stay home until further notice, it was determined that they went to a local school in Tennessee and engaged in a workout. Reportedly, even Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback, was there. A bunch of other players, they all but admitted to it, and it was confirmed by several sources that this happened. So that was not a good look for the league at all. That was actually worse than the Raiders debacle, where several players were photographed at a fundraiser without masks and not socially distancing. So that was an even worse look, because these players were told by Mike Vrabel, at least that's what he said when he talked to the media, the Titans head coach. These players were told to not gather and to stay home and to stay away and to just isolate themselves until they were given the okay to come back to work, which of course they never were, because more players tested positive for the virus. So the Titans are not they're not anybody's friend right now. Nobody has a high opinion of the Tennessee Titans, and as with the week before, heading into week 4, there was talk that maybe the Titans game against the Bills should be a forfeit, with the Titans obviously coming out on the losing end. And while I was dead set against that last week, I can kind of see that now, since it was such a huge breach of protocol to gather and practice when you were told not to do that. But I still don't think that's the right move. Honestly, I don't think that a forfeit is the right move. I think the league handled the first problem with the Steelers the right way, I think, to maintain the integrity of the game, and that's by rescheduling for a later date and reshuffling the buys. And I think they're doing the right thing this time by moving the Bills-Titans game to Tuesday. And as of this morning, as of the last time I checked before I came on the air, no more Titans players or staff members have tested positive for the virus. So I guess that game is still on, and we'll see what happens before Tuesday. I wouldn't put it past the way things have been going with the Titans. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if more players tested positive, and that game against the Bills was postponed. But I still don't think a forfeit's the answer, because if you forfeit that game for Tennessee, do you retroactively forfeit the game against the Steelers? A lot of people say yes. A lot of Steeler fans say yes. A lot of Steeler fans want that to happen. And I'm sure maybe some of the players want that to happen, because a lot of players, including Ben Roethlisberger, have been very vocal. Vance McDonald came out and said some critical things about it, that they're getting the short end of the stick, and maybe they are. But what happens if this forfeit with the Bills and with the Steelers, say they both benefit with a victory, and maybe you don't care what happens to the Titans, with 2 losses, maybe they don't make the playoffs because of that. Okay, if they were negligent, if they disregarded the protocol, shame on them. They don't deserve any sympathy. But what about the other teams around the league? What if the Steelers get a higher seed or get the number one seed based on a forfeit, right? What if that happens? Would that be fair to a team that misses out? What if they sneak into the playoffs because of that forfeit, and another team that didn't benefit from a forfeit, they miss? You might think, well, I don't care about them. Well, you wouldn't be saying that if it happened to the Steelers. And we've got a long way to go. We got 12 more weeks to go, or 13 more weeks. Wow, 13 more weeks of football to go for the Steelers and for the NFL. So they're not out of the woods yet as far as the Titans being the only public enemy number one when it comes to this coronavirus and not doing what they're told. And do we want to live in a post-forfeit NFL? Do we want to open up that can of worms? There's never been a forfeit, as far as I know. There's never been a forfeit in the history of the league. And does the NFL really want to set that kind of precedent? You might say, well, okay, these are special times, and the NFL won't be dealing with this kind of thing, hopefully, by 2021. I think the whole world hopes they're not dealing with this anymore by 2021. But they might not be dealing with the virus anymore. But when you set that precedent, then what happens if there's another cheating scandal, like with Spygate? Are people gonna demand that team's season gets wiped out, or it has to forfeit its championship, or it has to forfeit a particular game or two or three? What happens when every now and then there's a mini scandal in the league where players fake injuries during a game just to preserve timeouts or to slow an offense down? We've seen that with the Steelers. Emmanuel Sanders did that a number of years ago, and we've seen that all throughout. We've seen it all throughout the years in the NFL. Do you want to start saying, well, that team should forfeit because they were doing that? That's not fair. Or what about if a star player gets injured due to a flagrant hit, like a Patrick Mahomes? Say he gets injured and he's out for the year because of a dirty hit. Should that team? Are people going to be clamoring for that team to have to forfeit that game? Or what if there's like the Jesse James play from a few years ago, where it's determined later on that the officials screwed up with the interpretation of a call, and that call should have went the other way. And by that point, if you already set a precedent with forfeits, then maybe the usual written apology that the NFL sends out in those kind of cases, maybe that's not good enough anymore for some coaches and owners and fans, and they demand blood, and they want their pound of flesh, and they want something drastic to be done. So I don't think we want to live in that kind of world where it could be easier to look at a situation and go, remember that time we forced the Titans to forfeit a game or two or three or the whole season? And maybe we should do that again. Maybe we should look at that for this particular transgression that this team or player or players or coach committed on the football field. So I don't think they want to go there. Honestly, I think the best way to handle this, if it's possible, because you're not going to hurt these guys by fining them. You're not going to hurt the organization. Say the Titans get fined $1 million as an organization, or say a player gets fined $100,000. That might hurt some players, but it's probably not going to hurt most of the players. Especially a guy like Ryan Tannehill, who just signed a big deal last year. You think he's going to care about that? And of course, draft picks. I've heard a lot of people, including Brian Anthony Davis on Monday. He suggested that the Titans lose draft picks and they go to the Steelers, and I could see that. But is that going to matter for this year as far as competitive balance? Is that going to really punish the Titans right now? Do they care about that in the moment? I know the players don't care about that kind of stuff. So I think the best way to handle this, honestly, if it could be determined that these players willfully violated and breached the protocols that the NFL put in place, I think that the best way to handle this is through suspensions. I think Ryan Tannehill, if you start costing these players game checks for conduct that's detrimental to the league, then and I think that they might start taking things a little more seriously. And I don't know if they can do that. I don't know if the NFL, if it's written into the new CBA with this amendment with the protocol with the COVID protocol. I'm not sure if the NFL can do that. But as I just said, what's more detrimental to the league than engaging in activity that's threatening your very schedule, the existence of your schedule, the existence of your season? If you're the NFL, I mean, this isn't a poor PR stunt that like with Ray Rice or with Ben a number of years ago, or Ray Lewis, or this is conduct that's potentially putting your season as an entire league in danger. So maybe you can use that little loophole or that little clause in the contract that detrimental to the league part of the CBA and say, look, you guys are going, you're not doing what you're told, and you're threatening the season. You're putting us in danger, and you're putting each other in danger, and you're suspended. So maybe they can, moving forward, maybe they can do that. Maybe they can suspend Mike Vrabel for not having control of his team. I don't know if that would be fair to him, but I'm not sure he's as innocent in all this as a lot of people are saying. So that is topic number one. And topic number two is something I wanted to get into. And here's a great lead-in by Mule Skinner. And the bottom line, Roger, this is Mule Skinner. If you're listening at home, if you're watching, Roger Goodell was not prepared and is a terrible commissioner. Well, see, I don't agree with you, Mule. And that's going to be my next point. I think this is a great plan by the NFL. To echo Cam Hayward's thoughts when he spoke to the media the other day, it's absurd. It was absurd to think that the league was going to have 0 positive tests. When you're talking about there's 1,700 players roughly, and then of course the coaches and the traveling party, the people that work at these stadiums, trainers, you name it. It's not like Major League Baseball. It's not like the NBA where there are 4 times as many football players as there are basketball players. I mean, it's just through sheer math, you were going to have positive cases, and you're not doing it in a bubble. You're trying as best you can to have a bubble with the honor system, but you can't really do that with the NFL. So I think it would be absurd to say that they were going to have 0 positive tests throughout the entire league throughout the course of the season. So when you say that there's no plan, I mean, they're demonstrating that for isolated cases, they do have a plan. They showed that with the Chiefs Patriots game in Week 4 when Cam Newton, in basically the 11th hour, and another player from the Chiefs organization, a practice squad player, when they both tested positive, they quickly moved the game from Sunday to Monday. Now, a lot of people might say that was a wrong move because it was quickly determined on Wednesday that Stephon Gilmore also tested positive for the virus. And that put the Patriots and the Chiefs next games in danger, in jeopardy. But again, those were isolated cases. It wasn't a widespread outbreak. And they handled it right. Stephon Gilmore, I'm assuming, is still in quarantine. I'm not sure about Cam Newton. I think you have to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, so I assume he's still in quarantine. I don't know if he's playing in this game. I would guess not in the Patriots' next game, but that's still on as scheduled. So the as I mentioned earlier, the Titans game and the Titans and Bills game has been moved to Tuesday tentatively, because the Titans, as of this show, haven't had any positive tests in, I guess, a couple days. So the plan was designed for isolated cases. It wasn't designed for a major outbreak like the Titans had. So that tells me that because there's only been one team that's really had a major outbreak, it tells me that the plan is working, that the protocols that are put in place are working, and that these players are taking it seriously. By and large, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're listening to the the league personnel, the officials, the commissioner, their bosses, their coaches, their owners, they're listening and they're doing what they're told. We just had one case of a team that did not do what it's told. And that's why the Titans are having problems like this. As I said last week, this is not just about the protocol. This is about the people involved adhering to the protocol. No protocol is going to be foolproof if the people involved are not doing what they're told. And so when people say there's no plan, well, what other plan could you implement other than reshuffling the buys like they did with the Titans and the Steelers and the Ravens, and postponing games for 48 hours, and continuing to test these players to make sure nobody's testing positive for the virus? So what other plan could there be other than forfeiting games, which I'm dead set against, even though I can kind of see that now after what the Titans did, even though I'm leaning more in that direction a little bit, since the Titans demonstrated such ignorance and such stupidity by gathering and working out. I still don't think that's right for the league to that's not the right way to go for the league to forfeit games. So other than that, and extending the season by a couple weeks at the end of the year, which as I talked about last week and others have said, you could probably do that. You could probably push you could delay the postseason by a week or two and get any makeup games in. But right now you don't have to do that because it's only one team. So when people say there's no plan in place, I honestly don't know what they mean by that, because there's only so much you could do with the NFL. When you're talking about a sport where you can only play one game a week, you can't schedule doubleheaders. You can't schedule two games in a matter of 3 or 4 days. You essentially, and you can't, unfortunately, these players can't be treated like the rest of us. And, if you're around somebody, then you also have to go into quarantine for 14 days. And I think there are cases where that's happening, but for the most part, it's based on negative tests. So that's pretty much the best way you can handle it, is to test these players every day. The ones that are infected, of course, they have to stay away, but everybody else has to continue to be tested every day up until the day before the game, and then play. And if both teams are clean heading into the game, then theoretically there should not be any way that the virus should be transmitted from one person to another, because there is no virus. No virus exists if all these players are negative. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the COVID stuff, and I will move on to Sunday's game between the Steelers and the Eagles. So the Steelers are taking on the Eagles Sunday afternoon at Heinz Field at 1:00, and I think this is the first game since maybe the Giants game, but I even more so because we didn't know much about what kind of Steeler team we were going to see in 2020, because there were no preseason games, and we didn't get to attend training camp, and it was kind of a mystery. So I think it's the first game of the year where on paper it looks like the Steelers should win going away, just based on the fact that the Eagles have so many injury problems. Their top two receivers, Jeffries and Deshaun Jackson, are both going to miss Sunday's game. Avonte Maddox, starting cornerback, he's going to miss. They have problems along the offensive line. They have injuries there. They don't appear to have much offensive firepower outside of Zach Ertz. Carson Wentz, he's not having a great year. I don't know what happened to that guy at all, quite honestly. I mean, I know he's had some injury problems, but he looked like he was an MVP candidate when he first started out in 2016 and 2017, and he's just gone downhill ever since. So I think he could be exploited. He's mobile, like a Deshaun Jackson. I'm sorry, Deshaun Watson. He's mobile. He likes to get outside the pocket, but he's not the quarterback that Deshaun Watson is. So, and he doesn't have the weapons that that Watson has. So I think it's just a matter of being disciplined when he tries his run pass option stuff, and it's just a matter of being disciplined and staying home, and recognizing when he still has the ball and when he doesn't, and just making sure he doesn't break off 20, 30, 40-yard runs, because I think he's capable of that. As far as being able to beat the Steelers through the air, I don't think he's going to be much of a threat, because he doesn't have many threats on as far as skill position players, and he's already thrown through 4 games, 9 interceptions. So I think he could be exploited there. He's vulnerable there. So obviously the key with the Steelers is their pass rush, which is the best in the league. They already have 15 sacks through 3 games and 39 quarterback hits. They seem to generate pressure nonstop. So the key is forcing Wentz into some critical mistakes, which I think they can do. I know they're going to try to get rid of the football quickly. That's their MO. They like to get rid of the ball to the running backs and the tight ends, and they don't like to stand. Wentz doesn't like to stand back in the pocket and survey the field. So, but you can still disrupt them, I think, because of that offensive line and because their pass rush is so fierce. And outside of Zach Ertz, the tight end, which Steelers have had problems with so far this year with top end tight ends like Noah Fant, they've had issues. But as Jeffrey Benedict pointed out the other day in one of the film breakdowns, Terrell Edmonds excels at covering the tight end more so than a Devin Bush does. So maybe if the Steelers can adjust and learn from that week 2 game and learn what Devin Bush's strengths and weaknesses are, and learn what Edmonds' strength is, and maybe his number one strength, and that's sticking with tight ends. Then hopefully they'll employ that strategy tomorrow on Sunday and stick him on Ertz most of the game. So if they can neutralize Zach Ertz, if they can contain Miles Sanders, the running back, which I have no doubt that they can do. They're number 1 in the NFL against the run. They've shut down Saquon Barkley. They've shut down Melvin Gordon. So I think I think they can contain Miles Sanders. So it's just a matter. I think it's just a matter of making life miserable for Carson Wentz. So I think they can do that. As far as on offense, you have to neutralize the Eagles' pass rush. The Eagles don't have a great secondary. They don't have great linebackers, but they have a great defensive line led by Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and of course Javon Hargrave, who signed with them, the former Steeler. He signed with them in free agency, so they're going to be a formidable foe, and they lead the league in sacks, albeit with one more game played than the Steelers. They have 17, and they also have 39 quarterback hits, and they had 43 sacks last year. I think 108 quarterback hits. So they're no slouches with getting after the quarterback, and that's mostly their pass rush is mostly generated by the front 4. So I think they it's just a guess, but I think they play a lot. They drop their linebackers in zone coverage a lot, and so I think it's good. Just like with Carson Wentz, I think it's going to be incumbent upon Ben to get rid of the football quickly in most cases. And I look for James Conner to have a big game catching the ball out of the backfield. And unlike Carson Wentz, I think Ben obviously has more weapons to throw to. Obviously, Juju, Deontay Johnson, James Washington, the tight ends. So I think he's gonna be able to spread the football around a lot more than Wentz does. So I look for the Steelers to win this game going away. I think they're gonna have an easy time with the Eagles. Honestly, I mean, famous last words, I know, but I really do think that they're gonna have a fairly easy win on Sunday, and I look for them to improve the 4-0 for the first time since 1979, which is a year that they went to the Super Bowl and won it. So there's some precedent there. Not that it really has anything to do with now, but a 4-0 start's a 4-0 start. So I look for good things from Pittsburgh on Sunday. And before I open things up to questions, I just want to offer my thoughts and wishes and get well wishes to Tunch Ilkin, the longtime Steelers right tackle and the longtime Steelers color analyst, who it was revealed on Friday that he is battling ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and that's obviously a terrible news, and you hate to hear that, and Tunch is he's been such a great ambassador for the Steelers organization. I mean, here's a guy like a lot of players in the '80s. He came along right when the Super Bowl era of the '70s ended, and a lot of those players from that era, from the '80s into the early '90s, Chuck Noll's the last 10 years of Chuck Noll's career as a coach, when they were transitioning from that era, there are a lot of players that had really good careers here, but they didn't get celebrated as perhaps much as they should have, because there were no championships won during the '80s, and they only made the playoffs 4 times, and it wasn't quite the same. It was but Tunch, he was a 6th-round pick out of Indiana State, and by the late '80s, he worked himself into one of the premier right tackles in the game. He went like a year, 2 years without giving up any quarterback sacks. He was a really, he had a really accomplished career, and he in the late '90s he joined Myron and Bill Hillgrove in the booth, which wasn't an easy thing, because Myron Cope, he's a legend and everybody loves him, but he was pretty territorial when it came to that. Myron often said, Myron Cope, in some of the books that he wrote over the years, that players that he palled around with in the '60s and the '70s, the guys like Andy Russell, they made fun of him for not knowing X's and O's. But conversely, he was pretty territorial about journalism, sports journalism, and that athletes had no business, commenting on that, doing that job. So when Merrill Hodge first tried this in the mid late '90s, I guess, in the Steelers booth, and he had to sort of be separate. He wasn't allowed in the booth, and he was only allowed to speak when spoken to, that sort of thing. He was almost like a sideline reporter, but up in the booth. But Tunch came along, and he made the transition, and he meshed well with Myron and Bill Hillgrove. And then when Myron Cope eventually retired after the '04 season, Tunch Ilkin took over and transitioned seamlessly into that role, and he's been great at it. And he's you hate to see that kind of thing, because he's such a pillar in the Pittsburgh community. He does a lot of great work in the area, and just hopefully, he said he's determined to fight it, and hopefully he's able to do that. So thoughts and prayers out to Tunch Ilkin. So now I will open things up to some questions and comments, and we'll actually touch on Tunch. Here's a comment from J.A. Jr. Tunch Ilkin is the best in our prayers. I echo those sentiments. Let's see what else here. Here's one from Mule Skinner. Really bad news for the great Tunch. Prayers for him and his family. Well, thank you, Mule. Steeler Pittsburgh says love Tunch. So let's see here. Gary Houston, another comment that echoes a lot. I'm sure what a lot of people were thinking. Why are the worst things happen to the best people? Hearing about Tunch really ruined my day. Yeah, I think a lot of people felt the same way, Gary. So let's see what we have here as far as some questions. Let's see if you have any questions about the game. Here's one from Erica, a comment from Erica. No turnovers Sunday, and we should be good. That's right. They broke a 25-game streak of turning the football over in Week 3 against Houston. They had no turnovers for the first time, I guess, since 2018. So, yeah, taking care of the football is key. Pittsburgh, I think, has 3 turnovers as a team so far, and the Eagles have 9. 9 with I think I misspoke earlier. Carson Wentz has 7 interceptions, which is a lot still through 4 games. So he has 7, but the team has 9. So that's definitely an area that could determine, or that's definitely a category that could determine Sunday's game. I think it's the most important stat in the NFL, taking the football away. Here's one from my friend Terry, T-Money. Tunch was always about helping people. He will come to the forefront for ALS. Absolutely. He's going to be a great spokesman for that unfortunate virus or disease. There's no question about it. Here's one from Steelers Pittsburgh. What happened to the practice player that's Jerron Jones that was accused of domestic violence about a week ago? I don't know. I haven't heard much about that since then. I don't know if he's still with the team or not. But yeah, that was definitely an unfortunate thing. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. Here's one from Ponta Cumba. Can we pipe in some booze as well as cheers to make the Eagles players feel at home? That's a funny comment. Actually, they don't have to do that anymore because as of last week, Tom Wolf, the governor of Pennsylvania, he lifted the restrictions on or at least the total restrictions on fans being allowed to attend outdoor sporting events, and there'll be 5,500 Steeler fans at Heinz Field on Sunday. So I'm sure they'll be more than willing and able to generate booze for the Eagles. The stadium won't have to do that on its own. The fans will be able to do that just fine. Here's another comment from Mule Skinner about Tunch. The Steelers should dedicate the Eagle game with a big win for Tunch in the game ball. Who knows? Maybe they will. I mean, Tunch is he's tight with the players. He's been with the organization off and on since 1980. So he's a great ambassador for the team. He always has been. Here's a comment from Ezra. Are they letting Eagles fans in? I assume whoever there were tickets available on the open market, so I assume that some Eagles fans tried to buy tickets, but I mean they were expensive. As I read about the other day, they were starting out at $379. That's the lowest ticket I saw for one ticket. That's a lot of cheese, as they say. So I mean, as long as they buy tickets, then yeah, they'll be allowed in the game. As far as I know, they're not. There aren't any restrictions to the 412 or 724. Anybody's allowed to allow it in. It's just all about social distancing and being on your best behavior. All right, let's see what do we have. What else we have here? Here's a comment from earlier from Mule Skinner about the Eagles linebackers, which is a great point. The Eagles linebackers are lightweight and vulnerable to a power running game. Well, there you go. And James Conner, for all the criticism that he faced, including by me, after his really weak and meager performance in Week 1, he's really looked strong the last 3 weeks, especially the last 2 games. The last 2 games against the Broncos and especially against the Texans. He looked really strong. So here's one from Ezra. Does McFarland get more touches than Snail? Well, that's a play on Benny Snell's name. Well, he looked great when he had 6 carries for 42 yards. He looked explosive. He looked kind of like the player that he was in college, and he looked pretty close to busting a couple of those runs. So, I mean, he certainly had a great debut. So I could see him getting at least as many carries as Snell on Sunday. I figure James Conner is probably going to get 15 to 20 carries, and Snell and McFarland will probably split 8 to 10. That'd be my guess, because I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to go deep very often. From what I've read, the Eagles defense is a lot like the Broncos, where they try to take the deep ball away and they try to flood the zone, so to speak. So I don't think, but I think a sound running game might be the best way to go. Let's see, Dave Shipley, $2 super chat question. Thank you, Dave, for the donation. Always appreciated. What now and out special teams impact? Well, I think yeah, it could potentially impact the special teams because these are two of the Steelers' top special teams players. That's one of the main reasons why Derek Watt was signed in the offseason. Yeah, he's a fullback, and he's a good fullback, but he's also a great special teams player, and he was essentially Tyler Medikevich's replacement. And of course, Marcus Allen, he hasn't done much as far as work in the defense, but he loves to get out there and run down there and lay the wood, so to speak. So yeah, it could definitely be an impact. So that's something to watch out for because as much as the Steelers seem to be superior to the Eagles on paper, we've seen a lot of games over the years turn because of one or two special teams plays. So that's something to keep an eye on. Alex Flores, how many sacks for the D line? Are you talking about the Eagles D line or the Steelers? From what I read, the Eagles have 15 sacks, and see Brandon Graham and Cox and Joey Sweat, I think his name, or Sweet. I think they have a combined like 8 to 10. So they definitely, most of their pressure is generated from the D line. All right. Well, on that note, I thank you all for participating and for joining in. And it was a great show, and I had fun. I hope you guys had fun. And I will talk to you on Monday on the Steelers Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy tomorrow's game and go Steelers. So long, everybody.